All right, hey guys, it's Diego. I'm here to talk about real estate startups and chasing expression on Jessica Fury's podcast. Tune in every Monday.
Welcome back to the podcast. Today we have Diego Torres-Palma. He is a developer and an investor. He is a managing partner of the Ventana Ventures, and he is the host of the Startup to StoreFront podcast. And he's also a board member of Image LA. Diego, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. I have to start with a story, how I met Diego. But before we get into this episode, I want to remind you to like and subscribe because it continues to bring amazing people like Diego on the podcast. So thank you. So I have a close friend of mine, and he was on the podcast, and he owns Blue Cube Tubs. And when I wanted to present Tom to the podcast, he's like, people don't really give a shit about me. Like, hopping up in a tub, it will be so much better to push the episode if you're in a tub. And I was like, okay, but who? Like, I don't know anyone in LA. He's like, let me go through my customer list, and I'll go through a bunch of people that are using our Blue Cube Tubs. And he was like, there's a guy in West Hollywood. Let me connect this person with this other person. And that's how I met Diego, because of hopping in a Blue Cube Tub. So I want to start on that. Why did you start doing cold plunging, and what, like, was it something you needed to add for your business, or was it something that you needed to sort of like up your wellness? What was the I want to cold plunge?
I did this charity bike ride in Florida probably, maybe like 15 years ago. And it was a bike ride for charity that started in Miami and it went all the way to Tallahassee. So it's like literally from the bottom of Florida to the top. And on that, there was a day where somebody had paid for the whole team to do like a wellness routine. And so we go to this like super advanced sports clinic with all of the equipment for recovery. Now, recovery wasn't a term people used 15 years ago. It was just like a place for people. It was like a gym, like a better gym. But recovery wasn't really a thing spoken about unless you were a super elite professional athlete. And so we get to go to this thing, and they had a hot tub next to a cold plunge, like a cold bath. And I'd never done that, but I was so curious. And so I did it. And then afterwards I felt great, and I cycled so well the next day. And so I was like, wow, like there was something to that cold experience I just had. Now, again, this is pre Joe Rogan. This is pre Andrew Huberman. There's no data to suggest this thing is at all something. Fast forward to today, last year, a couple of years back, you're starting to see it again, all this cold plunge and recovery, and there's science and this and that. And so for me, it became like, I remembered that moment I had on that bike ride, and I wanted it again. And so I started cold plunging at different locations around LA that are opening up as like wellness. So they have the saunas and the cold plunges, and you go and you pay like $50 and you do the thing. And then I was like, I'm going to buy one because I wanted to do one in my office. I didn't want to have to go to some place every day and spend $50. And so then you start to meander through that. And Blue Cube, what landed me on Blue Cube was that they have the pump that the water is always moving.
Mm-hmm. The thermogenic.
And so a lot of the places in LA have these baths where the water isn't moving. And what happens then is you don't have the ability to create like a thermal layer. And so it's actually pretty easy to do. Once you're used to cold plunging, it's really easy, because you're really only in shock for 30 minutes or 30 seconds, and the rest of the time you're fine. And so the Blue Cube one, because it kept the water moving, it was much harder to do. The reason I do a cold plunge has less to do, I would say, I play a lot of tennis, so there's definitely a recovery element to it. But the reason I do it is more, it's a mental thing for me. And so the idea, entrepreneurship, development, all this stuff is hard enough on a daily basis. And I don't think people really understand the ins and outs, but there's like financial, challenges. There's, in this environment, inflation. There's the Fed raising interest rates. There's political consequences to some of your projects. And so there's a lot of things that are at play, and somehow choosing to torture yourself in a cold plunge, which has benefits, makes all that other hard stuff feel pretty easy. And so to me, it's a mindset game. It's nothing to do with the recovery. It's purely a mindset game.
Is it the challenge? Is it the competitiveness? Is it the overcoming a fear? Is it overcoming some part of yourself that I can do this, I could do this, I could do this? Because Tony Robbins at I jump in cold showers. I hate them, but I mean, I eventually would like to get back into like a cold plunging routine, but I'm okay with just jumping in a cold shower. But Tony Robbins says, feel the fear and do it anyway. And right before I jump in a cold shower, that's what I think. I'm like, shit. And I just do it. But what is it for you that you're like, it's a mind thing?
I think it's like nobody really wants to be in cold water. I think it's that simple. And so to me, it's like you're doing something no one really wants to do. And in my life, there's like several different. So Tony Robbins, that's a good phrase for it. Some people say if you want to be successful, you have to live over your skis, right? And so it's like some people say, the example I like to give is like snowboarding. If you were to go snowboarding, most people, like if you were to sign up for a class and you never done it, they put you on a bunny slope. The irony of the bunny slope is you will not, because of the slope, you're not able to gather enough speed for you to actually do a turn. And so what ends up happening is you end up doing like a turn or a half a turn, and then you go back up and you keep practicing, but there isn't enough of a slope. And so there's this irony of life, I think works this way, where you have to pursue things that are extremely difficult for you to actually learn anything. And if you're trying to be linear about it, so if you're trying to be like, I'll give you a real estate example. Most people get into real estate and they go, I want to buy my house, and they buy their own house. Great, now they have their own house. Then at some point they might say, oh, what if we flip it? What if we renovate and then flip, right? And so then people start doing these like small flips. And in the hopes in their head, they want this linear alignment where they'll say, one day I'll do big commercial real estate. And I think they have that wrong. I think if they were to just start off doing the thing they actually want to do, the big hairy goal, the big crazy thing, I think they'd be more.
What's the big hairy thing?
Whatever
What's
it is to them. So it's personal. It's personal to everybody, you know? But I think with cold plunging, to go back to that, it's more of you're choosing to do something that puts you in discomfort. And you can choose that in business. You can choose that in goals. You can choose that in your relationships. You can choose that in anything. But the cold plunge is like, it's a real one. It's a real one. It's like, why would I choose to go in 40-degree water? That's not it, you know? Especially on days like today. So here we are in LA. It's raining outside.
I know.
Right?
Did you go on the cold plunge today?
I do it every day. And so all winter long, it's the hardest. Because you get out and it's cold outside too. And if it's raining, then you're already cold and wet. Now you're just entering more cold and wet. And so there's a whole nother mental game to it.
When you mentioned recovery, my first thought was recovery like from addiction. Because I come from a background of either I had a brother who passed from an opioid addiction. I'd been in a relationship with someone who's sober. I'm in service with Al-Anon, and so I'm very familiar with the recovery world. I'm not like an expert, but I like to be in service in that aspect. So when you said recovery, I was like, oh, like my mind didn't even go into like my fitness wellness background of muscle recovery. It was immediately like a recovery of something, like an internal thing. And did you experience and have you, as an entrepreneur, like that internal battle is a daily self-reflection. You have to personally, you have to reflect daily on that. And when you said recovery, I still want to know, like, was it an internal thing that you had to overcome for yourself? Because somebody's not going to work out just to work out, to look good aesthetically, which you do want to look good aesthetically, but you're overcoming something, an internal thing.
I don't really know. I think at this point it's so part of my routine, but it's like the ultimate wake me up for me. And so whether, like, I think for some people it could be coffee or something crazy. I don't know. For me, it's like it resets me.
But do you remember the time when it was going, that time that it was going on, the feeling that you may have felt? I guess it was like an adrenaline or a high or like, this is amazing.
I mean, at the beginning, it was more like you're just curious. And so it's like, does this thing actually work? What is it like? And then you start to feel good after it. And so you're like, oh, this thing actually has pretty good benefits.
Yeah.
And so you experience more good than bad, I guess, is the way I look at it. But getting in is the bad. And so then it's poetic in that way.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. But you said something, you started to say something about real estate, and I definitely want to switch gears because you said we're looking at like from here, and then my goal is there.
Yeah.
And now you've created your business and you're also your podcast in the reverse, and you have found, and I'm going to have you better explain it. You have develop properties and you find the tenant instead of the landlord, you almost find it to be like mismatched, like the way that the process of how people do it. Can you share about that and how it's worked for you?
And so when I first moved to LA, I should say this, by background, I've had a couple companies, one in fashion, one in technology. I spent some time in Silicon Valley in tech. And so by background, it's like I'm an entrepreneur in terms of starting companies. When I moved to LA, I had no plan. I really had no idea what I was going to do work-wise. And my wife didn't love that. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to figure this out. And so I just took inventory. And I think this is advice I give everyone is like, take inventory of the things that you're good at.
That's a recovery thing.
Okay. And so in that, like, take inventory in a real way of like the things you're good at and the things you're bad at. Like, be very, very honest with yourself. If you're fat, write down fat, right? There's opportunities in that. There are things that are good about it. And so my point is like, tall, great; short, great; fat, great; whatever it is, write it all down. Good at math, maybe good at fundraising, good at presenting, good at conveying ideas, all these things, write those things down. And then say, okay, where can I apply these skill sets? And so for me, it became like, can I do real estate in like a really fun way? And so what did that mean to me? That meant I had raised capital, so I knew how to do that. I knew how to put together decks. So I knew how to show an investor why they should invest. So I knew that. And then at that point, I thought I had a pretty good understanding of a concept and how to convey a concept. When I moved to LA and I started driving around, even Sunset, there was a bunch of empty buildings and they were for lease. And I thought to myself, if you're an investor or an owner of that property, you've relegated your wealth to a broker who's going to hopefully bring someone to you to lease out this property. Now that range of tenants can be anyone. It can be a brand new barber shop, a tattoo shop, a smoke shop. It can be Starbucks. It can be Sweetgreen. It can be like a brand name. These things are not the same in the way the world views them. And so from a banking perspective, if I wanted to get debt, having a Starbucks is a better solution. That's interesting. If I want to create community and maybe give new entrepreneurs a chance, then I would lean more toward the mom and pop coffee shop, right? But there has to be a vetting that goes on. But I just found it weird that there were all these for lease signs. It's like I would never relegate my wealth to a broker or to anyone. You know, it's like if you own that building, that's your building. In London, there's a vacancy tax. And so if your building is vacant, I think more than 6 months, you start to pay a tax on your property. And that incentivizes owners, developers to start getting someone in the door, like a business to pop up. And how you do that is up to you. And so you can give free rent or lower rent or whatever it is. But the idea is get someone in so we have more vibrancy in the community. And so then I just looked at the math problem simply. So the math problem was buy building, hire broker, get a lease, hopefully soon. And I said, that doesn't make any sense to me. And so I just flipped it. And I said, what if we could find the tenant first and then ask the tenant where they want to be and then acquire an asset in a location that is appealing to them? Maybe they have roots, maybe they've built community, whatever it is already. And then what we spend our time on is like vetting these operators and making sure that they're bringing something to market that's of value. It's unique in some way, and that, you know, they'll hustle. They'll work pretty hard to do that. And so that became the whole hypothesis of the company. And I started going down that road. And yeah.
If somebody is looking to raise capital, what would be something that, and they don't know which route to take, what is a suggestion that you would make?
For real estate or?
Let's keep it simple, real estate. Because you can always apply it, you can change it to be something else, even if it's a business.
So I think if someone is, okay, so it's a complicated answer, but I think the simplest form is if you're looking to raise capital, I don't know, everyone has a very strange relationship with money in the sense of some people grew up without it and some people grew up with it. Now, let's just pretend you're just someone who was raised middle class. At some point, you've probably seen struggle in your parents, or like maybe they mortgaged their house for you to go to college, or maybe they just let you know how much money they had, and so you had to take on some personal debt for college. And so money became important in some way. And so your relationship to money comes first all of a sudden. All of a sudden, you put money first in your life. You do this. And I think the normal American does this every day. And so I'll pause there for a second, and I'll give you another example. Let's say you and I right now, we decided to go to Lake Tahoe or Big Bear or Aspen. Let's say we wanted to go to Aspen. And let's say we were going to drive there, right?
Oh,
and
finally, I get to go to Aspen.
And I said, what do you want to do? Are you interested? What would you do? What would you say?
I would ski. I've never skied before, so
Okay,
I've been
great.
wanting to ski.
Ski. Yeah. What else would we do?
I don't know. I guess I would want to go to the stores because it always looks
great
like pretty.
Stores. Right. Okay. And so in this example, there's a couple things people never mention. And the example is they never mention gas. They'll never think about the gas price.
The gas price of renting the car to drive around.
You didn't even question that.
Oh.
Or even how much a ski lift ticket cost, right? You never, right? You didn't, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody does. Mm-hmm. That's the point. And so when it comes to you trying to raise capital, if you're raising capital to do some real estate endeavor and you believe it's going to be epic, which you would, right? You would believe it's going to be epic, or else why are you going to go raise capital, right? It's got to be worthwhile.
Yeah.
And so if you think that thing is worthwhile, why do people, instead of it first you said ski, second you said shopping, why don't people place their attention on how epic this thing could be and instead place all their attention on, man, how am I going to raise capital? I've never done it before. It's interesting. Mm-hmm. That would be like them worrying about the gas pump. How am I going to afford gas money? And so the moral of the story is, when you decide to go to raise capital, you personally decide where to put your energy. And so your energy could either be put on, oh my God, fear, how the hell am I going to raise capital? Or being like, I'm going to make this product so good that when I talk to somebody about it, there's going to be no doubt that they should invest their money with me. I'll give you another. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I'll give you another example.
I want to not cut you off, but just sort of apply something that I've heard with raising capital, where it's like, if you have enough, let's just say like my success is driven through creativity. Let's just say that I'm not a money person, I'm not a math person, I'm not a science person, but when it comes to creativity, maybe my success drives in creativity. Let's just say that as an example.
I think that's true of everyone, by the way.
I don't know.
I think that's actually all it is. But
I don't
continue.
know, because I've listened to a lot of podcasts with people that are either husband and wives or best friends, and sometimes it's like, no, my husband's really good at this, not good at this, I'm good at this. And I think that sometimes people don't embrace so much of their creativity, but just to keep it little, like keeping it simple. And people have, not saying that people have said to me, let's just say people have said to me, if you come with all your creativity and you can present it to, let's just say, an investor or someone that you want to build capital, they'll come in with the money. They'll come in with that side. But if you come with enough information and that you're presenting to someone, you'll open their ears up. And Tom is one of those people that has helped me with that, because he just, he comes from that background.
Yeah.
That's why he's not in front of the blue cube. He's behind it.
I'll give you an easier example, and I think this is the one I use. And so Jordan Belfort, right? So the Wolf of Wall Street, probably one of the best salespeople in the world, period. Now, obviously, he did some illegal stuff. Great. That doesn't matter in the sense of the story. So he has this really great example of why people make a purchase. And so the reason people buy is, there's only 3 reasons. And one of them is you, right? And so let's pretend there's 3 buckets. And every bucket is, let's say, 0 to 5. So one is you. So one bucket's you personally, the person doing the pitch. 2 is your product. And 3 is your reputation. So 3 buckets, 0 to 5, really simple. When I first got into real estate, nobody knew me. So let's call that bucket a 0. I had no reputation. Let's call that bucket a 0, which meant my product needed to be a 5. It's that simple. That's it. And so that's how I got my first deal. I recognized, no, I'm a new entrant. No one fucking knows me. I have zero reputation other than like some cool things I did in tech and whatever, but like that's kind of irrelevant to real estate. So even give that a 2 out of 5 if you wanted to. Great. And then the product, I put all my attention on the product. The product had to be really good. And if you're asking for money, generally speaking, there has to be a return on an investment, which means your product at the end of the day is a return on an investment. And you better put all your energy into making sure that you've thought about every single way that that's going to work. That's it. It's that simple.
What is your other example that you were making with Aspen?
The example there is to not focus on the money, but focus on your product. Focus on having the best time possible. And then once you do that, you'll realize how much money you need, and then you'll raise the capital to go do that.
Yeah, I always just try to come from like a feeling, like how am I going to feel, like a feeling of doing something. So like I haven't been in a position of like raising capital, but I've been in a position of putting like different business opportunities that at one time I was doing. Like I was going to open a wellness center at one time. And I mean, I still have plans for that wellness center, but I did not find the right investor. And that is a whole other story. I did not find the right investor for that. And I've had to really
Did you find any investor?
No, it was contingent upon other people. And I wasn't in a place, in my own growth, I don't think I was in a place to navigate more intelligently, to have the right conversations, because I was also in a position of being dominated by someone else based off of their connections to other people. So I didn't know. I wasn't that experienced in the business world. And now that, because I've gone through, I'm constantly doing like some sort of personal development and spiritual growth, because that's my inventory. I'm constantly taking inventory of myself, literally. That's my self-love. That's my self-care. But at the time that I wasn't even raising capital. This is almost the second thing that you were saying. What I was doing is I was actually just trying to present it to the right people. And because I didn't have that connections, that maybe now I have those connections because I have the maturity, and I don't know. I
don't think it's that. I don't mean to cut you off, but so this is like, I have these conversations all the time with entrepreneurs, all the fucking time. All the time.
Really?
All the time. And it's just like, it's like I tell people, there's several ways to say it, but I tell people like, get pregnant. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I'll give you an example. One person, they want to open up a bar, and I'm like, great. And they're trying to raise $800,000. I'm like, great. And I'm like, how much have you raised? They're like, 50 grand. And I'm like, great. Do you have a lease? No. Why not? Well, I don't want to sign a lease unless I go raise the full $800,000. And I'm like, okay, now imagine you're me. Imagine I'm the investor, and what you're saying is, I'm too scared to sign a lease, but you're not too scared for me to fork over a bunch of cash to you. That sounds stupid. Why do you, I don't want to fund your belief. I want to fund your idea. And if you, right? So in your case, entrepreneur has no money, which means all they should have is belief. The truest form of belief is signing on the fucking dotted line. Sign the lease. And then they go, you're right. And they go do it. And then here's the oddity of life. They've now raised the capital. And so in your setting, when you're talking about this failed experiment, or the way you look at it, failed experiment, you weren't ready, all this stuff, I just think that you went about it the wrong way. I think about it like you didn't have the belief. And what you're looking for is belief. And what all I'm telling people, like, entrepreneurship is so simple. It's, are you so fucking passionate about the shit that you want to do that you're willing to sign on the lease? If the answer to that is no, then don't ever ask anyone for money. Are you so passionate that you're going to find a way to do this no matter what, no matter no connections, no family, raised in low income, raised in Section 8 housing? And if the answer is you're willing to quit because of the voice in your head, cool, you don't have it.
How do people find that belief?
I think they have to find the thing that they believe in more than any, like, I think people discover this with children. Once I think most humans have children, something unlocks in them, and they'll do anything for that kid all of a sudden. anything.
Yes.
Anything.
Yes.
If there was a fire, they'd run into it. If all of a sudden I said, your child's going to die unless you go raise 100,000, you would fucking find a way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't do this fear-based thing. You would have this belief, right? And even when I say this to entrepreneur, I say it in a one-on-one setting, and it sounds controversial, but I think it's really that simple. And so when I hear like your idea of this wellness thing that didn't work out and whatever, all these factors you want to list, I just hear you didn't really want to do that wellness thing. And at the end of the day, I have the data to suggest that that's true, because you didn't do it. And that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's okay. And I'm
not saying it's not okay. I'm just saying it's something that you weren't really jazzed about.
You know, I wasn't jazzed about the situation.
But you could have found another situation.
And I guess this would be more a whole other conversation that I would have to bring you back onto the podcast, Diego, because if there was, I am not in a place on this podcast to speak about it. The situation that was going on at that time in my life with the people that were in my life.
All right, would you do it now?
Absolutely.
Okay. Why
absolutely.
aren't you doing it now?
I can pull up the business plans right now, and I would just everything's already done.
Good.
It's just something that's always been there, and it keeps coming back. But just at the time that it was going on, it's just the energy. I mean, I'm a person of energy.
Timing matters. Timing's a thing.
Timing is a thing. I mean, pregnancy is not a timing.
It's not?
No, because if I had sex like later on today and got pregnant, I wasn't planning on being pregnant.
Okay.
So that the timing would not be timing. I'm not like planning to have a baby. I'm like, you know what? This is a really good time. If we have sex today, that, you know, me and my partner, like we have sex today, like at least we'll have if I get pregnant, and there are people that do that.
Yeah.
And there are people that do that, but I'm going to just like take the focus on me and put it back over to you, because you said this to me on the phone, and I love it. That everybody wants to do it. They just don't want to get pregnant.
Yeah.
What is that?
It's like everybody wants the glory, but they don't want to do the work that's required to have the achievement of that glory.
What does that look like?
It's personal. I mean, it's totally personal to the human being.
But you work with a lot of entrepreneurs, and you invest in a lot of startup companies.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that look like? What are the things that you've seen? And you either come in from a place of mentorship, investor,
yeah,
or coming from a place of just like, you need to move past that fear, or you need to move past that to get to the glory.
The people I invest in are always, it's less about the idea or even about the Excel sheet. It's more about, do I think this person is smart enough, dumb enough, equipped enough, crazy enough to walk through every door that meets them? And if the answer is yes, I'm in. Because I know they'll believe it. I know they want it more than anything else. And that can be anything. It can be a water company. It can be almond milk. It can be sparkling water. It can be whatever. It can be anything. But if there's a part of me that believes that human will do anything to be successful in the sense of like taking this company to the level that they believe they can get it to, I'm in. And so to go back to, it's like an energy. It could be an energy thing. It could be, I don't know. It's like, you don't have to be smart enough. You could be dumb enough and succeed. Like, you just have to be convinced. You have to be crazy enough. You have to, like, I need to meet you and I need to be like, this person's going to figure that problem out. Why? I don't know. But they're going to do it.
Your wife is in a similar business, right?
Construction company, yeah.
She's in a construction company. Does your wife have emotions?
Yeah, we all do.
Is she emotional about certain things?
I'm sure we all are.
You're I don't know how long you guys been together, but it sounds as if you've been together for a while, because you mentioned 15 years before. And
yeah, like 9 years.
Okay, so women tend to be a little bit more emotional than men, right?
Okay.
Yes or no?
Yeah, I think that's...
Okay, so women naturally are more intuitive. Men are more, and I'm waiting for an argument and I'm okay with it, tend to think a little bit more logically in a place of intellectual masculine.
That's true.
I'm okay with being wrong, but I like this shit,
totally
so I'm
true.
okay with it. But women intuitively are going to make an intelligent decision based off of like, you know what, babe, this doesn't really feel right to me. Maybe it's like the time in the month where they get a little crazy with their intuitive thinking, but sometimes it's like, you know what, I just don't have a really good. This doesn't really feel right, and a lot of times it does work out where it's like, great, good thing we didn't invest that like $1 million in that. Like, look at the shit that would have. And there are times that, and going back to that thing where it's just like, just everything was just like not aligned to something positive. And it took me, I'm thankful because it took me out of a negative situation that was going on at that time in my life. So I would say that it worked out. It did work out. It's not that I wasn't passionate about it. I know that I was passionate about it because it's probably one of the 5 reasons why I moved from one side of the coast to the other side of the coast. And one of those things still wakes me up in the morning. I'm like, damn it, it's still waking me up. I still am very passionate about something that I'm just constantly driven by.
Okay.
So, I mean, like,
I don't know that has anything to do with like male or female. I mean, I think
it does in regard to when you were saying
I think my wife owns a construction company, right? So, and she's like pretty, and she's used to men being like, oh, is this your father's construction company or your husband's construction company? Like, she's used to being disrespected all the time. And I think what's interesting, something that I've found, and we invest in female founders, and I actually think women are better at it, at all of it. And what I mean by that is this, right? Imagine you going to your job site or just your job, and it's your company, and then the person you're meeting who might be in your lobby or in this case on your job site, they say something like that to you. Like, you walk in and they're like, oh, is this your father's company? The level of disrespect that you would be facing is crazy. And I think women, so men take that disrespect and they go, fuck you, they get angry, right?
Yeah.
Women take that disrespect and they say, I'm going to show you how much better I am at this. And it's amazing. And because of that, in today's society, I think it's unique to today's society right now. I think women are better at it.
I appreciate you saying that. I have a lot of respect for
I have a lot of projects that we have female project managers on, not my wife, employees, and they're always better. They're sharper. They care more. There's more care.
Well, that's what it is. Women come from a place of emotion. They put their heart into something.
Yeah.
They put their care and their love, and it's almost like,
I'm convinced of this. Like, I think men are just good at the gift of gab per se, and it gets them far enough, and women don't want anything to do with gab. And they just like the gift of like talking.
Oh, convincing.
Charisma, not convincing really, but just like women, they're just better. They're just more detail oriented, I think, in general.
Yeah, no. And I mean, I really respect that you say that, and you do recognize that. Like, I think that's such a cool quality to recognize the opposite sex of something that they do, as opposed to just being like, no, this is what they do. This is how they are. But, you know, I want to develop property. It's like one of my passions to develop homes. And, you know,
So what's stopping you?
I'll speak. Hold on. So I'll speak. Well, I just been opening up conversations with people, and I definitely want to open up this conversation now, is like just based off of what you just said. And, you know, I'm tenacious enough to get what I want, and I'll keep going after what I want. So I'll just keep opening up conversations and because I'm newer in the business of real estate as opposed to somebody who's been doing it for a while, I asked someone who's close to me, and a couple of them have said, like, you know, it's a man's world, and most of them are working with men, and they're not going to want to work with women. And so they're not going to want to work with women. And for me, I'm like, okay, I'm okay. Like, so what do you want me to do? Like, be the only, and then I read this article of this company that works with the agent that does a lot of development. I think it's called House of Rollison, and they work with like Farah and Mauricio's daughter, that they are a female development company. Like, they develop properties, and they're females. They're 2 female owners. And Why do you think that that's something that has been said to me? Like, well, it's a man's thing. What do you like? Men are already working with men in that particular thing. That's a man's job. Maybe they'll work with agents from the sales side, but why? Why do you think that's something that's been told to me?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't have that thing. So whenever like if let's say I was trying to do it as a Latino male and someone said that's a white man thing. Let's pretend that happened. I would look at that person and I would just say, "Oh, that's interesting. Like they're sharing data from their lens." So in their head, they're right. In their head, that they believe that. So in their head, that's the world they live in. That's okay. They can live in that world. That's no problem. I don't have any hatred toward that statement. If that's what they believe, that's fine. But so in that example where they say that to you, my brain would go, interesting, that's their worldview. Cool. I can go create a new worldview. And so I think one of the things in entrepreneurship I've learned early on, and like one of my favorite quotes was always, you create your own data. And so statistically on data, I should be in prison, but I'm not. Look, here I am, and I'm a developer. And so that means statistically I'm a unicorn. That means statistically I'm an outlier. That means statistically I'm like a black swan event. I'm the furthest thing that ever should have happened. So some people can go, wow, you're amazing. Or I just go, or I just decided to not believe anyone else's data and go create my own. That doesn't make me amazing. That just makes me me. And if you want to bucket me into amazing, that's on you, not on me. And so in your setting, when that guy said that, I'd be like, great, that's the world you live in. Cool.
So
I live in a world where my wife runs a $10 million construction company. Is she a unicorn too? Cool. Do people want to
shout out to her?
No, I
That's
mean, but
amazing.
like, I don't. That data doesn't do anything for you, right? And so it's like, it's a useless point for them to say that to you, and it's useless for you to take it.
So let's say somebody else that's listening to this, they've been in a similar situation. What is like action that you would suggest they take? Just continue to plug away and do development and do the thing that you're supposed to be doing? Like what is it that you would suggest for someone who's sharing maybe similar to what I was sharing?
I think there's really two routes. There's one where it's just like get better, right? Get better in the sense of the math, get better at running models. Like before I got into real estate, I literally I would model out 20 properties a day to the point where I could do it in my head. And so I was just getting better at the math, better at understanding acquisition price, holding price, construction costs, overruns, lease term, all that stuff, all of it. And I would just do it over and over and over. And so I became really good at the muscle of the math, right? And so if you want to get into development, understand one of the important things is the math. The Excel sheet has to be right. That's all that really matters. And so there are skills that need to be acquired in the development game. So you have to put the time into acquiring those skills.
And those skills are?
Those skills are understanding the math, for sure.
When you mean the math, do you mean like labor? Are you like the cost of this? Like, are you, what
all
is
of it? All of it. And so, I mean, I can give you a quick example. So
like subcontractors, like how
no.
in detail? Like,
so let's say you want to buy a property. Great. And it's for sale. Let's just say $1 million. Let's make it super simple. Let's say it's for sale for $1 million, right? So that $1 million debt today, maybe like $6,000 a month, right? So that's your mortgage, right? You with me?
mm-hmm.
Okay. And you want to rent out this thing that you just bought for $1 million. Great.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, cool, what are market rents? And so if the market rent, let's say it's 1,000 square feet, and market rent for this 1,000 square foot building you just bought for $1 million is $5 a square foot. That means you're renting it out for $5,000. So that means your mortgage is $5,000 and your income is $5,000. So you're not making any money. Right? You with me? Okay. Let's say market rent is $3. Okay, so now your mortgage is $5,000, your income is $3,000. Now you're upside down $2,000 a month. Is that a worthwhile investment? No. Super simple. Super simple. Could not be more simple. And so like that's the math people don't do. I'm shocked at the number of developers I meet that don't do that math. And I'm just giving you a simple example. Now let's complicate it one variable. Okay, so now let's say I buy it for $1 million. I put in $500,000 in construction. So now I'm all at 1.5. I finance the whole thing. So I have a $6,000 mortgage. Now I have to rent it out for something over $6 a square foot. I have to rent it out for something like $10 a square foot. Mm-hmm. And if I can't do that, it's not worthwhile. Mm-hmm. That's the math I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. And you and I were talking about this last week when I said like a lot of agents want to do development, and you said something like 85% of them fail because they don't understand the math.
Yeah, I don't know that I gave a percentage, but I would say most of them fail because they're doing it for other reasons. They're not doing it to make money. They're doing it because they want to like... Oh, look, I'll give you an easy example. When I first started, I grew up, I was in school in Boston, and I went to school for civil engineering. And this is as real as shit gets. Like, I think this is so simple. And I wish people just lived their life a little bit more like this. But I'm in Boston, and the first question when you're a single person in Boston, people ask, what do you do? That's the first question. In LA, it's a little bit different. But in Boston, New York, it's what do you do? Hey,
in
I'm
LA,
Diego.
they say that.
Oh, I've never, well, okay. Anyway, so in Boston, it may be more cutthroat. So they go, what do you do? It's your first question. And so for me, it was like when I said civil engineering, women would just go, not interested. No, nothing was sexy about civil engineering. And I was like, it's a pretty good paying job. So, but it didn't matter. So then I learned, okay, I got to throw that away. And I go, man, how am I going to attract this future female? Look, we're simple people. We're just humans. Humans at the end of the day want to meet a partner. They want to procreate. We're all wired the same way. Can't tell me different.
Yeah.
Great. And so all I needed to know was I need a better pickup line. How do I go do that when I live in a world where the first question is, what do you do? Well, I decided to start a fashion company with a tech component to it. Then when people would ask, all of a sudden I had the people's attention. I had the woman's attention. So I was like, great, that worked. And so my point of the story is I started my first company not to make money, but to attract a female. I think some people, when they want to get into this grandiose idea of flipping or developing property, are doing it for a little bit of clout, or doing it so they can put it on their gram, and it doesn't really motivate them creatively. And so because of that, they'll never actually do it. And if they do it and it goes wrong, problem. They have a bigger problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does make sense. And I think some people they do think about the money aspect. I don't think that they're like, oh, I'm going to do this because of any other reason, but I want to, make a lot of money from it. That's sort of.
But you can also lose a lot of money from it.
Right. And I've, that's
why the math I think is so key.
And
it can't be hopeful, delusional math. It has to be like when I was asking you market rents, I wasn't asking you, what are you going to charge?
Right.
That number is actually set by the market. Like that's not something we can just dream up. Like that's a market number.
Right. And the market's always changing.
Market's always changing.
And then you have to base it off of like what's going on. The
Homes
shifts
that were
going
$3 million 6 months ago are now $2.5 million.
What was that? And
homes that were worth $3 million are now $2.5 million.
Yeah. Do you think it'll go any lower?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we'll be in this situation until probably, I hate to say late spring, early summer, but I think we're going to be in the situation where it's going to get really tough for realtors. Tougher than it has already been.
And from someone who's been in the business for a long time, what does that look like? Like specifically, like what does that look like?
So I'll give you another example. So let's say you wanted to buy a $2 million home 9 months ago. That mortgage was roughly around like $8,000, $9,000 a month. Today, that mortgage is $12,000 a month. And so it's become much more expensive. And so that $2 million home is not worth $2 million anymore. It's worth like 1.6, 1.4 million. To go back to that mortgage that aligns with something someone could afford, let's say. Mm-hmm. So that's the problem. And so now you have these properties losing value. You also have a lot of companies making cuts and all this stuff. And so in general, there's going to be less buyers in the market. Now, where do we live? We're here in Los Angeles. What's been unique to Los Angeles? The writer's strike, the actor's strike. Now, people can say it's over. I get that it's over, but it went on for a long time. And so for this engine to ramp back up is going to take more time, right? Who owned some properties here in Los Angeles? Writers, actors, people in Hollywood, people in production. And so these people have been affected in a real way. And if you were, let's say, a super successful producer that had 3 homes, let's say one in LA, maybe one in Malibu, and then one, let's say, in Tahoe, now you're thinking of getting rid of one because it didn't go the way you wanted it to go. And this is the issue. But your house is also worth less if you bought it in the last 5 years. Now, if you bought that house 10 years ago, you're fine, and you can just dispose of it or rent it out. But from a disposition perspective, there's less buyers. And then from a rental perspective, there's less renters that can afford these numbers. And so it's just unfortunately it's going to be, I think this will continue for probably 6-7 months.
Yeah, I read something like that this morning. And what's happening is now the rents are going higher, home prices will go lower, and then the interest rates, like right now it's stabilizing, like the Fed has decided to stabilize the interest rates. Yeah. But who knows how long that will be before they.
So the Fed in general, the Fed, what they want people to do is spend money during the holidays. And so the reality of that is right now it's November, Thanksgiving, Christmas are coming up. The Fed will either they'll try to lower gas prices, give people a reason to travel still. But the American consumer in general will always spend during the holidays. And so that's okay. But the Fed won't raise rates. And so I don't think we'll see another rate increase until February. Now, the whole thing so here's the other crazy wrench is it's an election year. And so this is also, no one knows what the future, actually.
I know.
Right? You have Joe Biden, who may or may not run. We don't know. At this time, he's going to run. You have Trump, who's probably the likely candidate on the Republican side. And so who knows how that turns out, but these things have a way of impacting the economy also. And so that's why I think it'll last probably until late spring, early summer. And so if I was a realtor, right, so I'll give advice to realtors. And every realtor I know, friends of mine who are in the residential game, I think this is the thing, this is the opportunity. The opportunity is if you're in the business where you are either trying to sell a home and it's not selling, or you're trying to rent a home and it's not renting, there's a world where you can get a little bit more sophisticated and offer a lease to own type situation. So you do a 2 to 3 year lease, you agree to the strike price with your seller and the buyer, and now you've solved the problem of all parties. All parties being, if you own the property, someone else is paying your mortgage. Great. If you're a renter, you now have a place to live. If you're a seller who really needs to offload your house, now you have a guaranteed buyer over the course of a 2-year lease, a 1-year lease, or a 3-year lease. And I think this is an opportunity that every realtor that's specific to LA should be taking advantage of. And I can't tell you how many realtors I've talked to about this. And every time I do it, they're like, lease to own, what's that? Lease, what is that? How do we do it? What are the ins and outs? And I'm like, these are great questions. You can ask any real estate lawyer, attorney, and they'll tell you exactly the verbiage to put in these deals. But I think those are the deals that are going to carry a realtor through this recession. And I really hope someone listens to this and takes advantage of it. And if you're one of those people, bring me an opportunity. I'm happy to.
Well, you're going to promote the fuck out of this podcast.
I mean, I've been saying this for a long time because I think it's the right deal, right? It gives everybody what they want. The renter's not going to. So if you're a renter looking to buy, you're not going to spend $12,000 on a mortgage. You're going to rent it for $8,000. So you're going to spend a little bit less. At the same time, if you have an option to buy, and you were already in the market before, now you have a strike price. It's perfect.
And I think that a lot of times realtors are up against like the seller's needs and wants and wishes. And sometimes they're like, no, this is what I want, because they also need the money. A lot of times that seller needs that cash.
Yeah.
Like they're selling because they need that cash.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that's...
I think the ultimate sell here is like convincing your client why this is good for their cash flow.
Yeah.
And I think that's a pretty easy sell.
No, I think it just depends how you position it. Everything is how you position it.
Yeah.
Like, how are you going to present it? How are you going to position it? And you work with a lot of tenants, a lot of like startup companies. What are some of the things that you help with the communication with them that to put their mind in a healthier place during tough times. Because a lot of people they may be affected by what's going on.
I mean, look, I'll speak to our tenants directly. Our tenants, they know the game. They know this is hard work. They know the game. And so none of our tenants are struggling. They're all doing super well. We also just have a really interesting philosophy in everything that we do where people can have a good time for $20 at any of our locations, anything that we do. And so in that, we're not catering to the Michelin star white tablecloth crowd, right? It's like if you work at UPS or if you're a dentist or if you're a cleaning person, you can come to any establishment and have a pretty good time for $20. And so that there's a different mindset there. In that, our tenants work tirelessly to give people a reason back to come. And
And I think on the subject of things that you invest in and realtors, I was watching a video with Gary Vee like a couple weeks ago, and he was saying like a lot more realtors, they should be creative. They should go out there in the community, talk about restaurants, coffee houses, like go out there, like sell the community, like be more engaged in the community. Now, can you recommend a couple of the places that you invest that would be a form of plugging something in a community that people can go out there and they want to like?
It's literally what I do. And so like it's the best answer because it's what, okay, so why did I start a podcast? If I'm entering a real estate model where it's a tenant first model, I have to go out there to meet tenants first. That's what I have to do. I have to go out there into the world, into LA, and meet the people that are making the next best sushi, beer, cider, restaurateurs, whatever it might be. Okay. I could spend all day doing that. I could cold call people. And I was doing that, and I was getting introductions and whatever, but it was a lot of work. It was a lot of work. And I had to like drive all around LA, which is not that fun. So then I thought, okay, well, I've started some companies. I think I could create a podcast or a platform where a founder comes on and we have a conversation around how they got started in the hopes of inspiring someone who might be listening to that. And so that's why I started the podcast. And so the podcast was nothing more than a place for me to meet people that I thought were the movers and shakers of LA in a retail mindset. So that podcast is called Startup to Storefront. Literally startup to a storefront. That's the idea. And the people that come on it are restaurateurs, chefs, and also founders of companies that sometimes we invest in. And so brands that you may have seen, like big brands. We also have a ton of companies that have been on Shark Tank on the podcast. Now, to go back to Gary Vee's point, so you've been to our studio.
Yeah.
In the front of our studio is a coffee truck. That coffee truck is a super cool French Citroen 1950-something vehicle that used to drive around LA. I was so impressed that entrepreneurs would commit to rebuilding this old car that I had them on the podcast really early on. A year later, after they came on the podcast, the pandemic hit. They called me. Hey, Diego, you're a developer. Do you want to buy this coffee truck? And I was like, no, like I'm not in the coffee business. I think it's a cool truck, but I don't know what to do with it. So then I started thinking, and I was like, what if we could put the truck, which is basically a coffee shop in a box already, inside the building? So I called them like, what if we just put the truck in the building? Saves your business. We can do it in a way that has like big doors, so it's indoor, outdoor, right? Because at the pandemic, you couldn't be open if you were just an indoor, but an indoor, outdoor you could. And they were like, that'll never happen. The city won't approve it. And I was like, I think we can find a way to do this. And so we did. And so in that setting, what am I saying to you? I'm agreeing with Gary Vee. I'm also giving you a data point to suggest our tenant, that coffee shop, came on our podcast. That's how I got to meet them. And then I did business with them. That is case in point of what Gary Vee is saying. Mm-hmm. That's my podcast. Mm-hmm. That's what we do.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think sometimes like people make it complicated.
It's not that complicated. I think the problem is.
Wait, hold on. I'm going to just stop for a second. If somebody's not getting the point, the point is that and this is my perception with this, is like when you're building a relationship with somebody that you don't know where that next business opportunity may come from. It may come from that person, or they may recommend you to another person, but because you made that initial connection to that person, they're going to think of you.
Yeah.
If you're just somebody who's like, yes, Instagram and social media is an amazing platform, but when you're like the five senses, when you can like see, taste, touch, smell, experience the thing that's in front of you, you're going to make a greater connection.
But there's also one more thing I think that's important. This is the thing Gary Vee talks about more than anything, which is the consistency and the commitment to it. And so I've released an episode every week for the last 235 weeks. So like, I think there's a part of you that if there's a part of them, let's say that the coffee shop who was like, is he for real? There's no question. Like I'm committing to it every week. And so I think there's also this reality of if you do it once or twice or 5 times or 20 times, 30 times, people probably won't care. And so you just have to keep showing up, and then people will realize you're pretty serious. You're committed to your thing. And so that's at the end of the day, there's also that, which is you have to be consistent.
I think like just what you said right now, like I'm either going to turn it into like a voice note or just like create a reel that somebody can just continue to hear that, because like me hearing that right now, I'm so grateful. Cause like I put my heart into everything I do. Like everything I do.
Yeah. You should.
I do. I don't know why I'm getting emotional.
No, you should.
I just think that sometimes like people don't realize why people do things. They just do things like haphazardly, just thinking like there's not an intention to it. And I'm intentional and in intention driven person. Everything I do has an intention. Everything.
Yeah.
From the conversations I have, from the ability to it's just the intention behind it. And I think that's where when somebody is driven from passion, you do create opportunity, because people can feel that, people can sense that. And sometimes, and this goes like back to like Gary Vee and what you're creating with your own platform, is like Gary Vee says, like, if you're so driven by passion, keep doing that. If you're driven by dollar, which is, I mean, yeah, some people are driven by the money that they want to make with it, but sometimes it's being driven by the passion that creates the connection to other people, because that's how we procreate. That's how we procreate. Yeah. Otherwise, new businesses, I don't know. I kind of look at it sometimes like realtors are gonna.
It's all, look, I think it's all creativity. I think like here we are in a studio, right? So how many people come in this room to create one song? It could be 10 people, it could be 20 people, it could be 4 people. I think on every real estate project I've ever done, I really considered it an album. Like it's an album. It's no different than a musical album. People go, oh, what do you mean by that? And I'm like, I had this crazy idea that required like dollars. An album requires dollars. Mm-hmm. It required a producer, designers. We have architects and engineers, right? Then it required like an operator, and it's no different than music. And then it required the world to fucking fuck with it. It required the people to come out to support the thing that we thought in our heads people should support. And then they did. And there's nothing cooler than creating something that everyone gravitates to and has a good time at. It's music. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. It's just expression. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. I'll leave you with that. And so I think like when people ask me for advice or whatever, it's like you're just chasing expression. That's all everyone's actually doing. And so when you say things like I'm intentional, of course you are. You should be. You're chasing expression. That's what you're actually doing. Mm-hmm. You just happen to live in a capitalist society where you also have to think about money so you can go to sleep at night with a roof, mm-hmm. right? Or buy the car you want or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And so, but at the end of the day, the intention is always, in everything I do and everything you do, I'm chasing expression. Mm-hmm. I want people to know who I am. Mm-hmm. And I can achieve that by having a platform and telling them. I can achieve that by building really cool projects and having them be there without me being there. They still get the essence of that thing. And it's not just me. It's also like 20 people that came together to do this thing. investors that came together to believe in this thing. And now everyone gets to share in that thing.
Yeah.
It's the purest form of expression.
I have.
But it's also your obligation. Like, that's your duty. Your duty in life is to go do that and not let these fears hinder you down around money. And it's like, just do the thing you were put on the planet to do. Just do that.
And that would be then me tying in like the fact of doing the inner work that sometimes people aren't, they're just like this out there like trying to figure it out. But doing that inner work does open up something that you want to do. And I certainly believe in like little synchronicities, and it was definitely a synchronicity that I was able to meet you and you come onto this my podcast. Like, I'm so grateful. Like, I really am so grateful that you're here. I do ask all my guests 3 questions before they leave, unless they want to come back. What is a non-negotiable in your morning routine that sets you up for the day?
Probably the cold plunge. Yeah.
If you were to give a piece of advice or suggestion to somebody who is starting a business, or they want to raise capital, or they want to invest in something, what is a suggestion or piece of advice that you would give them?
Chase expression. Make sure it's meaningful to you. Make sure it means this thing that you're about to embark on means more to you than anyone else you'll ever meet. Know the numbers. At the end of the day, if you're asking for money, you should have a path for people to make money based on investing with you. And really just be committed to those 2 things. That's it.
Yeah, that's cool. What are 3 qualities of yourself peers would say about you?
Oh, God. I think blunt. I think direct. And I think like crazy. Like, I'm crazy. I'm a crazy dreamer. Like, I believe in this thing called infinite scale. And so if you came to me being like, I want to create a wellness platform, right? Or a wellness company or whatever, I would say, okay, great. How do we build the equinox of that? How do we build the Planet Fitness version of that, right? And in that you would know now we're talking about a company that takes over America versus a one-off.
No, this was just like the wellness center I was creating was a boutique.
That's what I'm saying. But I'm saying,
it was a boutique. You know, it wasn't a membership. It was a boutique, one private, because I've come from a background of working with a lot of like high profile and celebrities and people in the fitness industry that like, I wanted something private. I wanted them to come. It was kind of like,
but you can have that in every market.
It was kind of like a Medi Spa. Like, nobody's saying like, oh, we're all of a sudden now Medi Spas are all popping up to do Botox and do injectables. But prior to that, it was, I mean, it's still, when people get plastic surgery and facelifts, like, it's very private. It's very private. They go in one door, out another. And that was what I was creating. I was creating a private space where people can take care of their well-being, whether they're working with a yoga instructor or a nutritionist, like a very smaller scale of Canyon Ranch, which I'm sure you know what Canyon Ranch is. It was a much smaller scale of a Canyon Ranch, but more private and exclusive to Los Angeles. That's exactly what it was. It was like somebody can come in and work with me and be fucking Uma Thurman and not have to fucking worry about going to a gym and having people look at her. She could just come in, work with the trainer. If she wanted to then go work with a nutritionist, they can leave and go on to their day. And that's what it was. And with that, I will end here by saying thank you so much.
You're
Please
welcome.
plug
Thank
yourself or just plug your podcast.
At Startup to StoreFront, Ventana Ventures is the firm. I'm at Diego Torres-Palma on Instagram. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for being here. You can follow me at Jessica J. Fury, at Jessica Fury Real Estate, and follow the podcast. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon.